Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about the back health. This is a big one, huge topic. This is not a do it all, fix it all, one thing is going to fix every single back problem. So I'm speaking in generalizations. In my PT career, I've seen tons of back pain clients, and this is by far, though, the most common solution. This is the most common help, even for my own history of low back pain, since I had back pain since I was a teenager, since I can even remember as far back. So I've had the issues, I've had the back completely going out, put you on the floor kind of things. And the only thing that really turned the corner for me and turned back even chronic back pain was doing some of the things I'm going to show you today. So let's get into it. We have two parts to this. First part, we're going to talk about the disc health, discs being the material between your vertebrae all the way down. And then second, we're going to talk about stability, or stabilizing around the disc, stabilizing around your vertebrae for a solid core. Lots of ways to provide stability, but there are things I think that a lot of even PTs or general exercise, they miss, and they don't treat the back and the core differently than, for example, like the quads and the glutes. So we'll get into all that. Let's first talk about disc health and what to do, especially, I would say what to try, especially if you had a back injury that was related to forward bending. So a lot of times you'll see that the back injury comes along when you do something really simple to just like bend over, pick up a pen. And then you're like, what in the world? I just picked up a pen. Why did my back just completely go out? Well, that's because it was an accumulation injury. That was kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back. So whenever you have an injury related to some forward bending, or in the last day or two or week, you can remember a time where you were forward bent, you were gardening, for example. The longer you're in a forward bent position, the worse it's going to be. But also, the more likely what I'm about to show you is going to be helpful. So the first thing I would try to do is get on the floor face down. And then this is not only for injuries, but also just for general population. So especially if you sit for work and you're in that flex position, you're going to want to do this on a regular basis, like a daily basis. First, we need to know what flexion and extension are. So flexion and extension in the low back means this. This is flexion. Sitting is flexion. When you're gardening, it's flexion. When you're picking things up, that's flexion. Extension is this direction here. In a very interesting study, they measured how much cumulative time people in general with no back pain were in some kind of position of flexion throughout the day, and they just ran the totals of that amount of time that person was on average in flexion, and that added up to in a full day, the day, non-sleeping part of the day, it was a total of 5 hours in some kind of flexion. Now extension, remember, that's going backwards. The total time these people on average were in some kind of extension, 20 minutes. So we just live in a world, we function in a ton of flexion, not much extension. So this is going to make a lot of sense as to why we're doing this then. So what you want to do, get on the floor or on your bed. You're in a down position. Sometimes even the best thing, it might just be lay here and see what happens. You should feel like if this is going to be a helpful direction, you should feel maybe a little bit better, a little less pain if you are in pain. You can prop up onto your elbows, see how that feels. and perhaps that will help the pain. But what we want to eventually get to is a press up. So this is also what you want to do for just prevention of back pain. So the press up is only arms. Everything else stays relaxed and flat. So don't squeeze your glutes. Don't squeeze your low back. Nothing should be working really except like your triceps, basically, on this press up. The press up is something you want to maybe hold 2 seconds. You can play around with how long you hold that. And then I'm going to show you a progression. So to get a little more aggressive, and this is going to actually usually feels very good. My back kind of calls out for it. What you want to do is add an exhale when you're up. So you're going to inhale on the press, in, and then blow it out. And you'll feel your low back sag deeper towards the floor. Drop down and do it again. Now here's another alternative. What you can do once you're up, you can shift your weight to one thigh, hold it a second or two, shift to the other, and dang, that feels good. Especially if you've been sitting a lot in the day, this is gonna feel probably pretty amazing. You'll notice how I'm getting my elbows pretty straight. Some of you might be down here before your hips start to come off. That's okay, just try to stay relaxed, and eventually you wanna get to elbows straight, okay? So a couple alternatives. If you can't do that at work, for example, and you just have a wall, you can do something similar on a wall. Just put your elbows, your forearms on the wall, and then just relax your hips forward. Don't push them forward. Just relax forward. So that's a little more convenient. It's not as effective though. So you really want to be able to get that press up from the floor. Okay, so that's going to be by far, if you just take that away, that's going to be by far the best thing you can do for your disc health, for prevention, and something to try if you've been injured. All right, so let's move on to stability, and let's talk about some different planes of motion. So a lot of times when people think of back exercises, they're thinking of like sit-ups, for example, but I like to be really functional and use some of these principles. Principle number one is our core musculature is a different type of muscle than, for example, our biceps or our quads. It's meant for endurance. So you want to train it like it's for endurance. A sit-up is actually more flexion load, and you're doing it like a power move, which might be applicable for you, depends on, if you're in a certain kind of sport. But in general, for the general person, you want endurance type exercises. Now the core also, this is another little folly I think in general, is most people are only thinking flexion extension exercises to work the core. But the trunk works in every direction. So the first other direction we're going to look at is this lateral direction, going side bending, side bending. So this is super important because anytime if you're a runner or if you're walking and you've got one leg in the air, you need this stability side to side. So how do you train that? Pretty simple. So you're going to grab some kind of weight, and we call this a suitcase carry. So you've got a weight on one side, and what you want to do is just hold that down. This is to begin. Hold it down by your side, and then all you're going to do is walk with it, just walking forward. The other thing you can do is then train your balance a little bit by adding a big march step. If you can coordinate that arm swing like I'm doing here too, that's a bonus. Okay, and then a way to progress that is if you've got a kettlebell, it's a little easier. You want to put this in a rack position. This is called a rack position. It's out to the side, not in front too much, but out to the side. And what you're going to feel already just by putting it out up there is one side over here has to work really hard to not allow me to dip over to the side. So it's working very hard. And then I add in this march piece or just walk with it. And now you've got a really functional exercise. You've got an endurance exercise. And of course, we're going to do that on both sides, right? Okay, so that's the lateral plane. That's this side-to-side plane. We also have a rotational plane of core stability. So what we want to do for that is train our rotation strength. Now, this is one, again, where people maybe aren't doing ideal exercises, and you could do things like a cable pull or wood chops and all those things. And I think those are really good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're okay and they're pretty good. And it depends on, if you're in a sport or something like that. But I'm mainly talking to people, just general population. You work, you sit for most of the day. You're going to want a anti-rotation exercise. That means you want to challenge rotation, but do it in this midline position without big rotation movements. Okay, so this is called a Palloff press. It's a pretty popular exercise. You can find it all over the place. But what you want to do is get some tension on a longer band. You put the tension on by bringing it to midline. I like to just interlock my fingers like this. So you get that tension on, and immediately you should feel some pull to get you that way. Your goal, stay straight. Then you make a longer lever arm by pushing out straight, coming back in. You push out straight slowly. Try to get your line nice and straight. Return nice and slowly. And you'll feel that tension increase as you get out there. Now, a lot of this is going into the trunk. Some of it's going into the legs. So if you want to progress that one, what I would do is get yourself down lower. I would move this anchor down a little bit lower, so I'm pulling straight out. But if you go from your knees, now you're giving yourself a little less help with the quads. So same thing, boom, pull it over, pressing directly out, back in, just like that. Real slow. The slower you go, almost the better, because then again, we're working endurance. There's tension this whole time, but overall we're working a lot of endurance, and we're staying in this nice midline position. Okay, so so far we've got this plane, this lateral plane, and then we've got the rotational plane. Now we do want this flexion extension plane, but we especially want the extension piece. So I think you all know what's coming. That is best found when we're doing a hinge type movement or deadlift movements. So this is always the objection I get with deadlifts is, I don't do deadlifts because I don't want to hurt my back. But that's like saying I don't want to get hurt running, so I don't train to run. I just show up at the marathon. You do deadlifts so that you don't get hurt. You just got to do them well, and you got to progress slowly. So deadlifts are going to give you stability. If you don't do deadlifts, or if you avoid those hinge movements, that's a very functional movement we do day to day, every day. So you can expect to get stronger in that hinge movement by avoiding it, in other words. Okay, so here's how I would start. Take a foam roll, and then I'm gonna put this camera down a little bit. I'm gonna fire this camera guy, my assistant. So foam roll in front. This is gonna teach you the motion. Hands in front like this. Keys are low back, stays nice and arched. It doesn't move. The pivot point is your hip, not your back, it's your hip. So what you should see, and you can you can determine if I'm doing it well. You should see my hips go backwards first, and this roll, this foam roll from the side, should be going almost straight down. So the first movement is, notice it's my hips hinging. It's not my low back. It's not me doing this. I'm throwing my hips back out of the way. And then I'm gonna meet a point for me right there where the hamstrings kick in and they start to tighten. If I wanted to go any lower, I'd have to bend my knees. So I'm gonna stop there, come back up. And when I'm doing this, I've got pressure on this foam roll too. So you're gonna feel a little bit of muscle tension just by adding that in, which is great. And you're gonna go slow again. Train yourself how to do that. Make sure you have this movement down pat, and do that for a couple weeks of just training an isometric, almost an isometric, pressing in against that foam roll and get that motion down. And then what I would do is grab something like a kettlebell here. So I'm going to show you a way to use that kettlebell. You're going to do basically the same thing. So I'll show you from two angles, but I'll show you this where I've got my feet spread pretty wide. My arms are just dead hanging. And what you should see, again, is that this kettlebell goes straight down. Got tension in the hamstrings there. Gonna come straight back up. So shooting the hips back. The other thing is my head is following my spine. I'm not trying to crank it up, look in the mirror, something like that, and I'm not down. Just let your head follow your spine. So you should be kind of looking down at like a 45-degree angle or so, and then you're looking straight ahead. You should feel tension all along that back side. So from the front here, fairly wide spread, that kettlebell's dropping straight down, coming up. My head is just following my spine, and I'm hinging at the hips, okay? And then, of course, you move on to the barbell deadlift. And what I would do is, again, don't rush that training, but you do want to get to the barbell and deadlift. And I've found for myself in my own chronic back pain issues, that was the biggest mover for me to get out of that chronic pain. So don't be afraid of the barbell. However, I would also train in a grease the groove fashion. And I did a short video on that. I'll probably have some more videos on that in here, but you want to not push it really to your very max every set. And what I would also do is before and or after, even better to do both, do those press-ups. Do the press-ups before you hit the barbell deadlift, do them after as well. And that will help kind of reset your disc position and hopefully set you up for success. All right, you guys, I hope this was helpful for your back. Feel free to shoot me any questions in the comments, and I'll try to check those and answer them for you guys. All right, get after it.